In the quiet suburbs of Rowlett, Texas, a mother's life shattered into pieces, and what followed turned into a nightmare no one could have predicted. Darlie Lynn Routier, her name forever linked to one of the most controversial murder cases in American history, says she's innocent. She claims she didn't kill her two young boys, Damon and Devon. But the evidence? The evidence paints a chillingly different picture. Blood stains, contradictions in her story, and a community torn between believing a grieving mother and a cold-blooded killer. Could a mother really murder her own children? Could she truly be capable of such horror? Or, just maybe, is the truth more complex than we can imagine? This isn't just another tragic story, this is a case that's captured national attention for decades, with every detail scrutinized by the public. Was Darlie Routier framed for a crime she didn't commit? Or is there something darker and more twisted at play here? The truth lies in the details, and trust me, you won't want to miss a second of this story. Let's dive in, and see if we can finally unravel the mystery behind the death of two innocent boys, and the woman who was sent to death row for their deaths. It was June 6, 1996, a night that would forever change the lives of one family, and leave a community gripped in disbelief. Rowlett, Texas, a quiet, middle-class suburb, known for its sleepy streets and picket fences, was not the place anyone expected a tragedy of this magnitude. But that's exactly what happened. In the early hours of the morning, the Routier family's home, once a symbol of suburban bliss, was transformed into a crime scene. Two innocent boys, just 6 and 5 years old, lay dying on the living room floor, brutally stabbed. Damon and Devon, so full of life, so full of promise, were taken from this world in the most horrific way imaginable. And their mother, Darlie, was found barely clinging to life, covered in blood, her body slashed, barely able to speak, but still alive. Darlie's frantic 911 call echoed through the house. Her voice, trembling with fear and pain, told the operator that someone had broken into their home, that an unknown intruder had attacked her and her boys. She cried out in desperation for help, saying she couldn't save her children, that she didn't know what happened, only that she was in danger too. But what seemed like the tragic story of a mother fighting to save her children quickly turned into something much darker, a nightmare that would captivate the nation. Was Darlie truly the victim here? Or had something much more sinister happened in that home, a truth so shocking it would take years to uncover? Let's break it down. Let's meet the people at the heart of this case and start digging into the evidence. There's a mother on the phone, screaming for help, but are we sure she's innocent? Or is this a case of a woman with blood on her hands, hiding behind a web of lies? Darlie Lynn Routier, just 26 years old, was a mother of 2 boys. She had dreams, aspirations, and a family that seemed perfect to the outside world. But that night, Darlie became the center of a case that would not only tear apart her family but also spark debates across the country. Was she the one who murdered her sons? Or did she truly fall victim to a ruthless attacker? Let's take a closer look at the woman behind the screams and the manhunt, the woman at the center of it all. Who is Darlie Lynn Routier, and what led to that fateful night that would forever change the course of her life? As the investigation began, Darlie's story started to unravel. She insisted that an intruder had broken into the house, that she had fought for her life and tried to save her boys. But something wasn't adding up. There were no signs of forced entry. No broken windows, no shattered doors. In fact, everything seemed oddly untouched, except for the blood, of course. How could this be? If a stranger had entered the house, why was there no obvious sign of a break-in? It was almost as if the intruder had walked in through an open door, without leaving a trace behind. And then there was the dog. The Routier family had a dog, one that usually barked at the slightest noise. But that night? Nothing. No barking, no signs of agitation. The family's dog, which should have been on high alert, didn't react to the supposed intruder. Could it be that the dog knew the person who was in their home? Was this a planned attack, rather than a random break-in? But that was just the beginning. As detectives scoured the house for clues, the questions kept piling up. They started to notice strange inconsistencies in Darlie's story. For one, she claimed she had been attacked in the living room, but the blood splatter didn't seem to fit her version of events. In fact, some of the blood stains suggested that she may have been in different locations at different times, casting doubt on whether she was even in the same room as her sons when they were killed. But the most puzzling detail of all? The family's own security system. It was a high-tech setup, one that should have been triggered by any intruder, but the alarm had never gone off. Why didn't the security system detect anything? Was it possible that Darlie had known exactly how to disable it? Or was there something else at play here, something we haven't yet uncovered? These were just a few of the questions that kept the investigators on edge. The deeper they dug, the more contradictions surfaced, and the clearer it became that nothing about this case was as simple as it seemed. But the most chilling twist was still ahead. Could Darlie have staged the crime? Was this all an elaborate lie? Or was there someone else out there, someone even more dangerous, who could have committed this horrific act? Stay with us, because the shocking truth is just around the corner. There are still pieces of this puzzle that don't fit, and we're about to uncover them. As the investigation moved forward, the puzzle began to take shape. Detectives sifted through the crime scene with a fine-tooth comb, trying to make sense of what had happened in that small, seemingly perfect house. The first chilling discovery? A bloody knife, discarded in plain sight. But it wasn't just any knife, it was the murder weapon. And yet, there was something odd about it. The blood was still fresh, as if the killer had only recently used it. But why would someone leave the weapon so carelessly behind, with no attempt to wipe it clean or hide it? But even more disturbing was what wasn't there. The crime scene wasn't as chaotic as it should have been. No broken furniture, no signs of a violent struggle in the areas where Darlie claimed the attack had happened. It was as though the crime had been carefully orchestrated, or worse, staged. There were no footprints, no marks, no real evidence that an intruder had come crashing through the door. And yet, there was blood everywhere. Where had it all come from? And why was the scene so meticulously set up? This was the first major red flag. Darlie's account didn't match what the crime scene was showing. She had claimed she fought for her life and tried to save her children, but there was no evidence to support that in the living room. Nothing to indicate a violent confrontation, nothing to suggest an intruder had broken in with force. There were no signs of a struggle in the areas where Darlie claimed she had been attacked. But the inconsistencies didn't stop there. Forensic evidence indicated that Darlie's wounds, the ones she said were inflicted by the intruder, didn't line up with her version of events. Her injuries seemed superficial, almost as if they had been self-inflicted. The blood on her nightgown? It didn't match the narrative she had provided. How could she have been stabbed and bleeding so much, yet have so little evidence of a serious fight? Why was the blood spatter on her clothing inconsistent with someone who had been violently attacked? And then, there was the blood-spattered t-shirt. Darlie wore a white shirt that was stained with blood, blood that wasn't just hers. The shirt was prominently featured in media reports and quickly became the symbol of the case. But what caught investigators' attention was the fact that the shirt didn't appear to have been worn during the attack. It looked too clean, too staged. The media's portrayal of the shirt as evidence of Darlie's innocence began to shift. Could this piece of clothing actually be evidence of her guilt? The shirt became a symbol of doubt, casting a long shadow over Darlie's claims of innocence. And that's when the twists started to pile up, one after another. The blood, the inconsistencies, the lack of an intruder, all of these details started to paint a picture that was far darker than anyone had imagined. As the case developed, it became clear that there were many things Darlie had left unsaid, details she hadn't included in her initial statement. Was she lying? Was there more to the story than she was telling? And what about the blood? The forensic evidence didn't just point to a struggle, it pointed to a deeper, more chilling possibility. Was Darlie really the victim here, or was she hiding something far more sinister? The case was about to take a turn no one saw coming. As the evidence mounted, Darlie Lynn Routier's fate began to take shape in the eyes of the law. The prosecution had a theory, one that would eventually lead to her arrest and conviction. Darlie had murdered her 2 sons for financial gain, life insurance money that would ease her financial burdens, and to escape the confines of her seemingly perfect suburban life. It was a theory that was hard to ignore. After all, the timing was impeccable. Darlie's life insurance policy on her sons was substantial, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Her financial situation was not as perfect as it appeared, and some believed she saw their deaths as an easy way out. The motive? It seemed to make sense. Darlie was in a marriage that was falling apart, one filled with tension and strain, and her financial situation was dire. What better way to escape her struggles than to collect the insurance money and start fresh? But here's where things get murky. Is that enough to convict someone? Could a mother really murder her children, no matter how desperate she was? The prosecution's case seemed convincing, but what about the other side? What about the details of the crime scene that didn't match the story? What about the fact that there was no solid proof she committed the murders? The final piece of evidence that would tip the scale against Darlie was one that would forever change the trajectory of this case. The day of the trial, something happened that no one had expected, something that would shake the very foundation of her defense. A crucial detail about the bloodstains on Darlie's shirt was revealed in court. It wasn't just blood from her sons. It was blood from multiple sources, including her own. But that wasn't the most shocking part. The blood spatter on her shirt suggested that she had been far closer to the crime scene than she had originally let on, and it didn't align with her story of an intruder attacking her in the living room. Forensics experts testified that the way the blood was spread across her clothing was inconsistent with someone who had been the victim of an attack. Instead, it pointed to someone who had been at the scene, deliberately positioning themselves in the right place at the right time. The blood patterns indicated she could have been in control of the situation, not running for her life, as she had claimed, but potentially standing over her sons as they fought for theirs. This final revelation was a bombshell. It was a turning point in the case. A moment that would seal Darlie's fate. Was she really the victim of a terrible tragedy, or had she orchestrated the murder of her own children in cold blood, all for the sake of a fresh start and the life insurance payout? The truth, as it often is in cases like this, was a complicated, ugly thing. The evidence was undeniable, and Darlie was arrested and charged with the murder of her sons. But did she truly commit the crime? Or had she been caught in a web of circumstantial evidence, with no clear way out? The trial was over, but the question still lingered: was justice truly served in this case, or had the wrong person been convicted? The trial was a whirlwind, filled with shocking twists and turns that left many questioning the true nature of the case. Darlie Lynn Routier was convicted of murdering her 2 young sons, Damon and Devon. She was sentenced to death, and for years, she has sat on death row, maintaining her innocence. But for many, including her staunch supporters, the case is still open, still filled with lingering doubts, unanswered questions, and a deep sense of injustice. Was Darlie really the cold-blooded killer the prosecution painted her to be? Or was she a mother driven to madness by the overwhelming grief of losing her children, struggling to come to terms with a horror she never could have imagined? There are still those who believe Darlie was wrongfully convicted, people who point to the flaws in the investigation, the shaky evidence, and the rushed trial that led to a guilty verdict. The deeper you look into the case, the more troubling the questions become. Was there something more to the story, something that hasn't been revealed yet? Could someone else have been responsible for the brutal murders of Damon and Devon? Could the real killer still be out there, while Darlie sits behind bars, the victim of a flawed system? Or is the truth as simple as the prosecution claimed, a mother who killed her children for financial gain and a way out of her troubles? The tragedy of this case is not just in the deaths of 2 innocent boys, it's in the fact that the answers still elude us. We're left with fragments of a story, pieces of evidence that don't fit together, and a woman who remains steadfast in her claim of innocence. And as much as the case has been dissected, it's clear that the full truth has never fully emerged. The questions remain, and the debate continues. What do you think about Darlie's case? Was she wrongfully convicted, or did she commit the crime? Was there enough evidence to convict her, or is there more to this story than meets the eye? Could the system have failed, or did it get it right this time? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. The truth might still be out there, waiting to be uncovered. If you found this case as shocking and puzzling as we did, make sure to hit that like button and show us your support. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to Final Verdict Diaries, your go-to place for the most mysterious and controversial true crime stories. We dive deep into cases like this, exploring the evidence, the twists, and the unresolved questions that keep us all wondering. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. There's always a new story on the horizon, and we want you to be part of the conversation. Have a case you're dying to see covered? Drop your suggestions in the comments below, and let's talk about it. Share your theories, your questions, and your thoughts, because in the world of true crime, the truth is never as clear-cut as it seems. Thanks for watching, and remember, the final verdict is never as simple as it first appears. Stay tuned for more gripping stories from Final Verdict Diaries.